Welcome, Groundpassers, to the most professional episode of Groundpass that you will have ever heard, and no one needs to know any of the context for what might happen next.
No, this is just, we've hit our professional peak. Like, we were just a little tiny struggling podcast, but now we made it. We did it.
We did, yes. Although if you want to see our most professional moment, maybe stay tuned for our Meet the Professionals episode, which comes out in a few weeks.
You just reminded me of it. Okay. Not to hype it up too much, but our next episode of Meet the Professionals is the best one we've ever done. Well, Blair was really good. No, they were all good. Okay, no, they were all good. All our guests.
We're not allowed to have favorites.
Not picking favorites. They're all great. But this next episode really touched me, and I was just really happy to be part of the conversation. So I hope you guys enjoy it as well. But last time you saw me, I was at Indian Wells. I'm not in Indian Wells anymore. But we're here to talk about it because this is finals day, even though it's not started yet.
Yeah, it's not started yet. So from our perspective, the women's final starts in just over an hour. So I'm quite keen to get this recorded so I can go watch it. So, yeah, I think we do have some champions, though. Like, we have mixed doubles champions, and we've got the, it's the women's doubles champion, isn't it?
And the men's double. That was yesterday, too.
Right, the men's doubles was yesterday. Cool. I wasn't sure if we had results there. But, yeah, so we've got some doubles champions for you, but the singles champions, which are still TBD. But that's fine, because we'll probably just cover that in a coffee catch-up or a mini pod at some point. So Anastasia, let's go on. So you went to Indian Wells.
Yeah.
You didn't tell me you were going to Indian Wells. I found out when I checked our Instagram. Like, hang on a minute. What?
You're like, it's not that warm in New York. No, it all came together so quickly and last minute because I think I talked to you about it. And I don't know if we spoke about it on the pod or just like our conversations before.
When we recorded the preview, you didn't know you were going.
Yeah, I literally was like, I'm not going. I was like, I'm not going.
You lied to us, Anastasia. This is disgraceful.
I'm sorry. But the pull of the palm trees and the desert was really strong, and I got the opportunity to go, and I couldn't say no. I couldn't say no to the desert. So I went there, and I'm really excited I went. I'm actually really happy I went again because I went last year was the first time I ever went, and I went more as just a fan of the tournament. I went as a fan who just wanted to experience the tournament. This time around, I'd been there before. I knew where the courts were. So I wasn't looking at it more sort of like how do I get here? How do I get there? I was looking at it, I think, more critically, and also thinking about ground passers and what their experience was like and how we could sort of share that information with them to make it better. So it was definitely a different trip, but I have to say Indian Wells is now top of the charts. It's my favorite tournament. I loved every moment of it.
Yeah, I think it's obviously, I've said it before, saying again, my bucket list tournament, that's the one I really want to go to. And certainly you've continued to sell it. Although, are you absolutely sure that you would sell everything about the tournament?
Well, okay, so I do have some reservations, and I think this will bring us to our first topic, which is the second week of Indian Wells. So I went the first week of Indian Wells, which I stand by is the best time to go to a 2-week tournament. Always go to the first week, always go to qualifying. That's where you get the most bang for your buck. And with Indian Wells, I think they suffered from kind of like the second week slump a little bit. So if you were watching on TV, you would have seen that the stadiums are a little bit less packed, which is so crazy compared to that middle weekend where you could barely move around. There were so many people. The contrast then to that Monday was a bit shocking. You're like, wait, where did everyone go? And I think there are definitely a few things responsible for that. One of them is, and Will Buchek, who I talked to, he was at the event as well. And if you haven't seen our mini pod from last week, go check it out because I kind of talked to people about what makes Indian Wells special. And Will mentioned something that I kind of knew but hadn't really thought about until he mentioned it. But people who go to Indian Wells they don't live there. Very few people live in Palm Springs. In the summer in Palm Springs, it's awful. It's like 110, 120-degree weather. Very few people actually live in the desert there year round. So the people coming to Indian Wells, a lot of them are coming from somewhere else in California, from somewhere else in the country, from abroad, wherever. So when they come to Indian Wells, they're usually there for a chunk of time. You know, you come for the first week, or you come for the weekend, or something like that. And most likely what happens is everyone goes home on Monday. You know what I mean? So there are definitely less people there. But at the same time, the schedule changes a little bit, where a lot of the singles play, I mean, the draw is less. A lot of single players are gone. The doubles is still going, but all of the singles players, their matches are put on Stadium 1 and Stadium 2. The first day, like Monday and Tuesday, there are matches on Stadium 3 as well for singles. And then the rest of the tournament is doubles, men's and women's and mixed, and juniors as well. So that kind of reduces what you can watch. And what I also found out this year that I didn't realize from last year is after the fourth round, so when we get into the quarterfinals, ground passers can't go into Stadium 2 anymore. Because I always used to sell that as a great thing about Indian Wells, that ground pass could get you everywhere except for Stadium 1. But in the second week, once the quarterfinals start, your ground pass ticket cannot get you into Stadium 2 anymore.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense given that, you know, all the singles action is on the main two stadiums. That's what tennis insists on trying to sell as its primary product.
Yeah.
You don't need to go down the rabbit hole of, you know, if you're a doubles fan, that kind of messes things up a bit. But it makes sense for them to do it like that. But I can see why it'd be frustrating, and maybe it might be misleading what we've said previously about going to Indian Wells. But as you say, like, it's standard for a 2-week tournament. Particularly, like what you're saying is exactly the same sort of thing you would find if you went to a Grand Slam.
Right, exactly. And you know, we have our solutions, or we have a solution. I don't know if we have a solution, but just a couple of things that I noticed were in the second week. So the way the tickets work during qualifying, ticket prices are like $10 for a ground pass. And then the first few days, it's like $30 for a ground pass. By the time you get to the weekend, the ground passes are like $100, $150, that sort of thing. And then it comes back down, but I think it doesn't come down enough for what ground passers get. It's like in the second week, it starts at $60 for the first few days. And then today, actually, weirdly, they're ground passes for today. You will be able to watch the finals on the big screen, and then you'll be able to watch the junior finals. So the junior girls, boys, and doubles as well in Stadium 3. So you do get to watch some tennis in a stadium on the ground pass today. But then in terms of singles finals, you get to watch it on the big screen, and that's $30. And I'm just thinking, I feel like that should be 10, just like it was for qualifying. So I feel maybe the pricing is something that they can look at to kind of see if they can get more people to come if the pricing was a little bit more reasonable. But you're right. Like, I think every second week, every tournament with a second week deals with this.
Yeah. And I guess my kind of points on this would be, one, I think the US Open's pretty similar, if not more expensive, but it's kind of the way it steps down, its pricing is probably very, very similar. And like you say, with everyone kind of coming in from out of town, and you're kind of scheduling a visit to Indian Wells in the same way. Like, you know, that's probably why it feels like tennis paradise, because it's like, it's all people who love tennis going.
Yeah.
There's no, like, I'm not going to say there's no room for casuals, because we at Ground Pass want the casuals to go. But
yeah.
Like, we want lots of new people to try the tournament out, but I think that's where you'll get that fan base who actually love the sport and want to immerse themselves in it going. And with the second week, I think the people who are going know that they're kind of buying Stadium 1 or Stadium 2 tickets in advance, because they know it's a 2-week tournament. They know if
Right.
you're going from the Monday onwards, past the weekend, you're in the fourth round. There's not a lot of singles action. That's what you're going to be buying. And like ground passes are kind of great for people who just want to drop in on a tournament or kind of go on a budget. If you're going to go on a budget, you generally don't go second week to pretty much any event.
Exactly. I think we received, because I was posting a lot, we did receive a lot of messages from people saying, I really want to go to Indian Wells, but it's so expensive. And I do understand that there is everyone has their own personal budget. So it's hard to say what's expensive for me. Is that expensive for you as well? But I do think there is a way to go on a real budget. You know what I mean? And I think I eventually really actually want to write a little thing on our website, because I think if you go to qualifying and it's $10 and you're able to sort of like either drive to Indian Wells or have your own car, if you stay a little bit outside of Palm Springs, and then just commute like 30 minutes every day, you could get probably cheaper Airbnbs or hotel rooms and things like that. So I definitely, because, we didn't even talk about Palm Springs, the city. Palm Springs, the city, it's beautiful. It is expensive, especially during this tournament. I think that's where Palm Springs is also where Coachella, the music festival, happens. And when that's happening, the prices go up. It's kind of one of those, I think, vacation-y, kind of places. And I think there is a way to go on an ultra budget. You just have to, first of all, go to the first week, but it is the best week. Go to the first week. It's the best time to be there.
Is it more on the expensive side? Yes. But again, I think we need to look at kind of perspective here is that Indian Wells is probably a bit more remote compared to a lot of other places. Certainly what you've described makes it sound a lot like my experience of Wimbledon. It might be a lot of people experience of going to New York for the US Open in terms of like prices being a bit crazy. But if you look at prices to go to the tournament, it's a pretty, would you say it's a pretty reasonable comparison compared to other big US events? We're not going to talk 250s and 500s because those are going to be really, really good pricing wise. But like, if you compare it to Miami and Cincinnati, it's probably going to be similar, right?
It's probably going to be similar. I think it leans more to US Open prices, and Cincinnati and Miami lean more towards a lower price than that. So the way I would tier it, it's definitely US Open, Indian Wells, Cincinnati, and then Miami. Actually, I think Miami prices are a bit cheaper than Cincinnati. So, or maybe they're an equal footing either way. But yeah.
I mean, sites jump ahead there. We'll probably circle back to this, but it's probably good news for those of you who are listening to this and thinking, I could pop to Miami. Given that when you're listening to this episode, when it comes out, we're in the middle of Miami qualifying.
Yeah, tennis doesn't stop. It's kind of, I have a whole thing, maybe we'll talk about it at the end probably, but I am very, very impressed by the ability of tennis players to just travel to a new city and start playing tennis, because not on purpose, but I've kind of done that, and I'm go home for a week and I'm done. I'm not playing tennis, and I'm just, I need a break. I need a mental break. Don't talk to me. But they just tournament to tournament. Like, think of Aryna, Sabalenka and Mira and Draper right now, who are going to be playing the finals. Right after the finals, they're popping on a plane to Miami to start practicing, because first round of the women's tournament starts on Tuesday.
On Tuesday. At least the second round for them will be on, they won't be playing till Thursday, Friday.
Friday, yeah.
Where that's going to go. I would imagine they'll put Aryna's half on Friday. Mira's going to depend on where she comes out on the draw, which from our perspective will be coming out in about an hour and a half. So, we're not going to do a full breakdown there. But yeah, I agree. And I think one of the biggest physical feats in tennis is to maintain a winning streak on back-to-back tournaments. It's what makes the Sunshine Double such a unique and special achievement if you can do that. Or if you can do something like the Clay Double. No one's ever done the Canada-Cincy Double, I think, apart from Rafa. Big kudos to those of you who can do that recovery thing. But yeah, I mean, we've spoiled it a little bit, but like, I guess we're talking a little bit about from the second week at this point. Like, yeah, it's Aryna Sabalenka, it's Mira and Draper in the final, and what a semi-final lineup we had in Indian Wells. You had
So good.
They were in many ways they were the ideal for people to have made it. Maybe like some people could have said, oh, you could swap in Coco or Elena Rybakina, Coco Gauff, Elena Rybakina in there, and that would have created a similar sort of vibe. But in terms of like, given you had the four most informed players of the entire freaking season so far in one place, both matches were memorable for very different reasons.
Very, very different reasons. And the Indian Wells schedule, the way they do it is that they do the women's semifinals on one day, the men's semifinals on another day. So I watched the women's semifinals back to back and almost missed the second one. Almost missed it because and Nick, we talked earlier a little bit. The time zone is pretty rough for you. So have you caught up on these matches or did you watch any of them live?
I have not watched any of them. I've watched like 5-minute highlights of the first one. A little, I have my favorites, so it does have an impact on how much I want to watch them. But yeah, so for context, the first women's semi-final started at 4 p.m. Indian Wells time, and then the second one was about 6 p.m. just after Indian Wells time, which, is kind of late evening for you in New York, Anastasia. It was 8 p.m. for me.
I know.
And I did consider staying up and watching it, but I had to be up and about at like 8 a.m. on the Saturday. And I was like, there is no way. If at least one of these matches is an epic, there is no way I will sleep. So I eventually had to kind of go, you know what, I'm going to have to miss it. Yeah. And that's been my problem pretty much most of the tournament is that I miss over half of the matches because I need to go to bed probably about midway, like before the midpoint in the schedule a lot of the time.
Right. But I think there were really great matches for different reasons. So the first match was Iga Swiatek versus Mira Andreeva, where, I think it was the rematch. I think Mira this whole tournament was just rematches of the matches she won in Dubai, but she beat Iga in Dubai. So I think the anticipation was like, how does Iga respond? I think there was a feeling in general that Iga would maybe probably come out of that. But Mira Andreeva I think she really has, when you see players and people are like, oh yeah, they've turned a corner and they're a new person. I don't think I've ever seen something as drastic as Mira Andreeva turning this corner. Ever since Dubai, like her coming into Dubai, that run, and then now she just seems so different and just confident, sure of herself, knows what she's doing on court, doesn't she's not too high, not too low. It's actually so impressive to see. You have to remind yourself every single time she's 17 years old, But I think she came into that match with a lot of maturity. And Iga's response to it, I think, what was it? It was the first set she won. Iga's response in the second set was just like, oh, okay. You thought you were like, right. We thought Mira was going to win this in straights. And Iga's like, no. I'm still a really great player. Her response in the second set was ridiculous. It was a 6-1 set. And you were just like, ooh, that was tough. And in the second set, it just became a battle and who could keep their nerve the most. And Iga just couldn't, I think she just got too frustrated and it was distracting to her. And then that I don't know if that's why she lost the match, but I think it definitely contributed to the loss in some way. So I'm so impressed by Mira Andreeva, just really a mature performance. And it'll be interesting to watch today because Aryna Sabalenka just owns that head-to-head. So it'll be interesting to see if they haven't played since this, as we would like to say, new Mira Andreeva. So we'll see.
Well, you say that they haven't played since the Australian Open.
True, and that was so. In press, Mira was saying almost that was the catalyst for this new Mira Andreeva. She started working with a sports psychologist after the Australian Open, after that match. So, it'll be interesting. like you said, let's move through this podcast so we can both watch it.
You go watch it, yeah. But I
Yeah.
do want to comment on, the second one. Yeah, Maddie Keys got stomped by Aryna, like absolutely stomped. And there's reasons for it. I don't think Mad Keys was herself these 2 weeks, but she's still got herself to the semi-finals because she's playing that one at the moment, but was not ready for what Aryna was bringing in the semis. I think she will be next time. But yeah, Lovren won. What a revenge.
So I really literally almost missed this match because I watched the Iga and Mira match. So I was like, okay, I need a little bit of a break. I'm going to go make dinner, calm down a little bit, put the match on. When I put it on, I expected, okay, they're either going to be sort of like 3/4 of a way through the first set, or maybe they finish the first set, but very much not likely. I turn it on and it's 6-love, 3-love. And we're like at the 36-minute mark. It's just like, what? What happened? I went back to watch it back, but Aryna was playing so fast. There was no emotion. Like it was like she was a robot made to beat Madison Keys. Like it was so clinical what she was doing. And I was just like, wow, she must really have hurt losing that Australian Open, because to respond in that way, she meant business. It was so clinical.
Impressive, especially given, I think Aryna was underrated a little bit given the people she played in the draw up to that point. And I think, she wasn't necessarily being tested by the same kind of names as an Iga or a Keys or a Mira have been. But yeah, she came up against the big test and passed it with flying colors. Doesn't even do it justice. But yeah, and that's going to make this interesting, is that it makes the final dynamic very interesting. It's like, what's Mira like? Is Mira ready for this kind of Sabalenka? I think we don't know, and it's not like we're doing this live and we can go back and add something on afterwards. You will find out when we'll know the answer to that when the podcast comes out. Anastasia, was there anyone from the women's you wanted to comment on before we moved on to the guys?
I just wanted to comment a little bit about Coco Gauff's matches in general throughout this tournament. The one I actually wrote down in our notes was the Coco Gauff versus Bencic, which was the one match she actually, in my opinion, played well. Every other one, but she lost. She did lose that match. Bencic kind of did what Aryna did, where I do think Bencic should have won that Australian Open match. I think she was really close there and just ran out of steam. So she did what she wanted to do in Australia. But it's one thing watching a bad match at home on TV. Watching a bad match in person, I think I've decided I don't like that. I don't like it. I don't like it. Because watching Coco this tournament, I think she's trying to find her game a little bit, or is still working things out, but she just seems so sad on court. You can almost, because you're there, you're watching her in person. It just is like whatever she's doing isn't working, and she's really frustrated, and it just seems sad. And the thing is, she is winning these matches though, because until she got to Bencic, she was winning all these matches super ugly. And I think I've said on this podcast before that I love that whole winning ugly thing. And maybe that's just because I've only seen it on TV. Watching it in person is not fun, because you just feel so bad for the player, and you're just sort of like, you want this to be over for them and you at the same time. So yeah, it's really fascinating. I don't know where her season is gonna go. But yeah, she's an interesting one to watch right now, because when we saw her at the United Cup, I was like, oh, she's winning every single Grand Slam from now till the end of the year. And to have such a reversal of that thought is stark. It's kind of brutal. So we'll see. We'll see where she goes.
We'll see where she goes. I would say this about Coco Gauff, and I think this is something that, regardless of the technical stuff she's done with her game, which I still don't fully understand, the key thing about Coco, which will probably never change, is how she plays is dependent on her confidence in herself. That's always been the case ever since we saw her on the scene when she was 15. If she's very confident, she plays well. If she's lacking in confidence, it gets a bit scrappier. The good thing for Coco Gauff is why she's a top player is she still wins matches when she's not playing great, and she's still very, very hard to beat by pretty much most tennis players, apart from maybe the people who are kind of pushing towards top 10. And I think that's something to maybe bear in mind when we think about it is, yeah, Coco's one of the best at winning ugly in the world, and she can do it. But when she's not confident and she's playing a player who can expose that, that's a problem. And I think, if you're a Coco fan, you need to bear with her, because if you watch her and you go, she's not playing well, she's on a confidence dip. And that seems to be what you've observed as well, in terms of how she feels, her emotions on court. When her confidence is on the high again, you better believe she's coming for that trophy.
Yeah. I know that's such a great way of putting it. Okay, the boys. Now, sort of similar to the girls where it's like top 4 was such a great group of 4. The top 4 in the boys were also a really great group of players. I think the one that people might have switched out so that the story could flow better is switch out Medvedev for Artur Fils. So it really would be sort of the young, players born in the 2000s or making a charge and trying to take over. But yeah, so we had Jack Draper against Carlos Alcaraz, and then we had Daniil Medvedev versus Holger Rune. And the 2 players who make it to the finals are the 2 players that nobody, and I want to see your draw. If anyone in here listening to this podcast picked either Holger Rune or Jack Draper, I would like a physical copy of your draw.
I want screenshots.
Yes. Send it to us, email us, our email's in the description. Send it, carry a pigeon, anything, because I don't think anyone picked these 2 players, and they made it to the finals. And here's the thing, they were playing great all tournament. I think this was the tournament, especially for Holger Rune, who, when he first came out, it was, we have the new baby big 3. It's going to be Sinner, Alcaraz, and Rune, and it's going to be great. And he really kind of dipped a lot. And it's like in Indian Wells, all of a sudden, everything is coming back together. He's finding his way again. And he's got himself to the finals in such a really, playing really good tennis. And same thing with Jack Draper. I got to be in one of Jack Draper's press conferences, and I didn't realize this hip injury he has is chronic. He says it's just something he's going to be dealing with for the rest of his life, which I was like, oh, wow, that's a lot. And so to have that, but then to also have this moment where he's playing very well, I think what he's doing really well is managing his schedule very well. And he's not getting to the points anymore where it's his body is failing him. And if his body is not failing him and he's playing like this, welcome to the top 10, Jack Draper, because by getting to the finals, he got into the top 10. And I think it's somewhere that he can stay for a while. And so then I guess we can talk about the 2 that didn't make it. And Carlos Alcaraz is one. I think it's really hard to do a 3-peat. I posted to our social media some clips of his interview that he did yesterday. And I just think he's very young, and we forget that. I think he's a baby. He's a baby. He has feelings. That's why we love him, is because he has feelings, and he puts those feelings into his tennis, and he plays this sort of brash, don't care, has no care in the world kind of tennis that we all love, and, creates all these highlight reels and stuff. But I think as fans of the sport or of Carlos Alcaraz, you have to take that style of tennis with the possibility that he's going to run hot and cold sometimes. And he's going to have a lot of feelings, and he's going to get nervous, and he's going to lose to someone who, quote unquote, I really hate that. But this is one of my pet peeves when people are like, well, he shouldn't lose to that person. That's such a, I don't know. I don't like that phrase. He shouldn't lose. What do you mean he shouldn't lose to that person? Like
Yeah,
they're good
how
players.
small, who are the people he should lose to? How small is this list? Like, is the only person it is acceptable for Carlos Alcaraz to lose to Yannick Sinner?
That's a little too
Or
much.
maybe Novak Djokovic, if you want to be generous.
Right?
But yeah, like I'm the same. Like, any player there's the list of people you shouldn't lose to shouldn't exist. Like
Yeah.
every single tennis player has a peak level that is world beating, and the ranking reflects how often they achieve that level, not how high that level is. So you let's see how Jack Draper does. Like Jack Draper is a player who's been people have been talking about, being really excited about for ages. Like he's a US Open semi-finalist. He's beaten Alcaraz before on what might be Alcaraz's favorite surface at the moment, which is grass. So yeah, I agree. It's ridiculous to kind of limit. It limits play. It limits the whole field as
Yeah.
well as limiting the person involved. Quick one on Draper. I did want to say though. I've been telling everyone that Jack Draper is now a top 10 player because no one realized he was like, none of my sort of casual tennis fans who will probably watch at Wimbledon that I'm friends with realized A, the Indian Wells was happening, B, that he was playing, and C, that he was playing Carlos Alcaraz. And like the most people, and like I've been catching up with people today and like telling people Jack Draper beat Carlos Alcaraz last night, and everyone's going, whoa. And yeah, he's top 10 now. Like that's causing some excitement. But I don't think that excitement's going to show over here in the UK until the grass season comes around.
Right. It's one of those sort of unfortunate catch-22s where it's like people don't pay attention to tennis until it's like in their, they see the posters everywhere and they're like, oh, it's coming to my town or it's nearby or something like that. But yes, Jack Draper is top 10 now. And, people need to get to know Jack Draper. I keep sending what I do with my friends. I keep sending them the Vogue shoot. I'm like, this guy, he's top 10. He's top 10 now. Watch tennis. But yeah, Daniil Medvedev. I think this was a good tournament for him. Yeah. Our little
Yeah.
octopus. Just hanging
By
in
the way,
there.
I know you were saying about Daniel Medvedev, like maybe spoiling the party a little bit with Artifice creating the sort of like quadruple, quadruped, whatever you want to call it, of these young players like under 23s. But I think it was worth it just for Daniel Medvedev's celebration after beating Artifice. For those of you who maybe not know, Daniel Medvedev does not normally celebrate tennis matches. He was jumping for joy when he beat Artifice in one of the tightest tennis matches you could possibly get. It was a really, really, really good match. Like it's rivaling Dimitrov versus Monfils for match of the tournament. It probably was the match of the tournament, given how dramatic it was. But Medvedev just literally jumping for joy, like it was really wonderful to see. And it's nice to see that he's still got that fire in him to want to compete, because he's been looking at down the dumps and looking a bit demotivated. He was motivated out there, and like he was motivated to try and beat Holger Rune. It just wasn't happening on that semi-final. But boy, oh boy, that was a great get out from Medvedev. And yeah, for those of you who maybe aren't watching the video, Anastasia is desperate to come in here because her level of enthusiasm for that is just beyond anything. I thought he was going to win the tournament after I saw that celebration.
Right. That's what it felt like, but he was so happy. He was so happy. Daniil he's like your grumpy cousin who you're just like, you love anyway, even though he can be so grumpy sometimes. And, to just see him happy, that was nice. Because I think he has been going through it and it hasn't really been great. And I'm sure he's dealing with the sort of, as the kind of like, I still relevant in this sport, and just to see him so happy in that moment was worth watching the whole match. You feel bad for Arthur Feast because it was close. It was, the ball could have just, the wind. We haven't even talked about the wind. The wind could have tipped the ball over to one side and it would have been a different match, but Daniil was super, super happy.
Yeah. And that makes us happy as well, even if you're an Artifice fan.
Exactly. Gotta love Daniel. Okay, we are.
I think that singles done right. I was about
Yeah,
to say, if we want to talk about doubles, I didn't catch any of these, but I can guarantee to you that I was marking every match to get up score updates for Evan King and Christian Harrison, especially when I realized how deep in the tournament they went.
it's kind of crazy. So Evan King is someone that I met and interviewed at the Champagne Challenger. And coming up this Thursday, I'm going to post the full interview that I had with him because I posted clips of it. If you watched our little Challenger documentary, you'll see clips of it. But I'm going to post the full one this Thursday. So stay tuned for that. But I interviewed him there. And during the interview, which you'll listen to, he talked about the struggles of being a lower ranked doubles player and how his goal is always to get into the Grand Slams because that's kind of where you make your living is from the prize money you get there, but also not being able to play with the same players because in order to get into these tournaments, you have to have a high enough ranking. So you need to make sure you're partnering with people who have a high ranking. So the average of your ranking gets you into these tournaments. It's such a rigmarole and like calling people and be like, do you want to play? Do you want to play? And his partner, who he would love to have played with the whole time, is Chris Harrison, who Chris was injured, so wasn't playing for a while. So his ranking dropped and they couldn't get into tournaments anymore together. So it's just such a really awful catch-22 of wanting to play with the same person and in order to become better, because the way you become better as a doubles pair is if you just keep playing together. And I think they were lucky enough to get into the qualifying for the Dallas Open earlier this year. And the run they have gone on from the Dallas Open till now is kind of crazy. They won the doubles title in Dallas from qualifying. Then they go to Del Rey and they get to the finals. Then they go to Acapulco and they win Acapulco. And then they get into Indian Wells as wild cards, I believe they were. Yes, they were wild cards into Indian Wells and get to the semifinals. Like it's the dream run. If you're not following this team, if you're looking for a doubles team to follow, this is a really great story, I think, to like follow. And I always like a good story, and they have a good story. So follow them now before they win a Grand Slam, and then you're like too late.
I mean, let's face it, it's doubles players, though. You'll always be able to see them on a Grand Slam, on a Groundpass.
Yes, that is true. But, it's one of those things where, I always talk of Harry and Henry, who are players that just came out of nowhere and won Wimbledon, and everyone's like, wait, what? And, now they're one of the, I think they're 1 and 2 in the world. No, are they 1 and 2 in the world? I think Harry and Henry are they're definitely in the top 5 of doubles players. And this time last year, they were not even a team. So, that's just how quick things can happen. Yeah, so Harrison and King got to the semifinals, but they lost to the eventual champions, who are they were the number 1 seeds, Pavic and Aravello, a very great established doubles team. So they won the the Indian Wells title. And on the women's side, the winners of the doubles title were Asia Mohammed and Demi Schuurs, a new team that started this year together. I followed both of them separately with other teams before, so it was really fun to see that they had partnered up this year. And the very first match I watched, it was actually the second doubles match, because the first doubles match I watched at Indian Wells was Mira Andreeva and Dana Schneider, their doubles match, which they lost. And then I go over to the next court, and Asia Mohammed and Demi Schuurs are playing against Sara Errani and Jasmine Paolini. And they beat them. And I thought, wow, Jasmine Paolini and Sara Errani are a very good doubles team. Okay? Olympic medalists, Grand Slam winners, they're a great doubles team. So I was really shocked by that win. And they had good form, because then they go on to then beat Taylor Townsend and Katrina Siniakova the current top doubles team and then win the title. So that's another great doubles team to watch. So don't say we didn't give you great names of doubles teams to watch. Go watch them.
Definitely good combos of players there. Absolutely. Asia Mohammed, obviously known for a while. Demi Schurz has been a long-standing doubles specialist, and I'm really good to see her get some more success on the circuit. So yeah, lots of exciting doubles. And like, hey, look, this is what we're for. We're here to give you the insight on like, hey, these are people who are good to watch. Go watch them whilst you, like, when you can, be on the inside, get ahead of the game, and impress your friends that you called it. Just maybe don't tell them you've stolen it from us. Anyway, in addition to Indian Wells, there's the Arizona Challenger, which has been happening. And you talked about the baby big three being originally being Sinner, Alcaraz, and Rune. Rune has now lost his place, potentially replaced with Xiao Fonseca, who's still going, by the way. He went out the first couple of rounds of Indian Wells, but now is in the Arizona Challenger final against Alexander Bublik.
Yes. Another baby. He's like 18, even babier. But okay, this Arizona Challenger, I have to go to next year. I think all the stuff I've seen, it's always been a tournament I've kind of like circled around and be like, oh my God, it looks so great. It looks so cool. This year, first of all, the field was great. Really great group of players. And just the stories and matches coming out of it were just so fun. And I think I posted a photo of a poster they had that was being sold. And I was so sad because they were like, oh, you can only get this at the tournament store. And I was like really sad. I was like, can someone buy this for me and bring it to me? And the artist actually reached out and said, we'll hold one for you and mail it. And I was like, so once that, I know that was like really, really nice. So once that comes, I'll show you guys once it's arrived. But I really think the Arizona Challenger is great. And this is the thing about challengers. I think people just think, what is a challenger? It's a tiny, and yes, some of them are super, super small events, but the Arizona Challenger looks like a 250. It probably looks like a 500. It's a pretty stacked event and it looks really great. So it's one I will definitely recommend. And like you said, Joao Fonseca is in the finals after going out early to Jack Draper at Indian Wells, and he's going to be playing against Sasha Bublik, who is doing a Tsitsipas. He changed his racket. He's playing with the Babolat Arrow, the hot new racket.
I mean, Madison Keys got there first. Just want to point that out.
No, she totally got there first. She, once she did it, everyone was like, I can change my racket? I did not know this, but definitely a lot of players are changing their rackets. And in fact, you actually messaged me about this, but I did a little video about racket changes because we were just getting a lot of messages being like, what do you mean he changed his racket? Like, what does that mean? It was just a lot of questions. So I just thought, oh, let me just sit down quick and record this video and explain what's happening. It is one of our top watched videos on social media right now. Like, I still get messages from that video on wherever I posted it. And I'm just like, these are, I love doing these little explainers. So maybe I'll do more little explainers like that. But it's looking like Bublik is trying out Babolat Arrow racket as well. It's blacked out, just like Tsitsipas's was blacked out. But his has some of the yellow peeking out. So you can tell easier. And he basically, the source where the story came from said he bought the rackets and black spray paint and just did it himself, which is
he didn't do a very good job given this yellow.
He did a good job. I know, but that is such a Bublik thing to do. You're just like such a Bublik thing to do. He went to Tennis Warehouse and just bought some rackets. But yeah, so that's the tennis that's going on right now. We will wrap this up with what's coming up, which we've already said.
Miami.
We're in Miami, baby. Miami Open is coming. Miami Open is here. Qualifying is starting today. So,
because I'm following the live scores on it right now.
Oh my word. See, there we go. So so Miami Open starting today. It's going to be on for the next 2 weeks. It's the second half of the Sunshine Double. And we'll be talking more about that in the next few days. So follow us on our Substack if you do not, because that's where you get all the little inside updates. if you want to see it before the next episode of the podcast comes out. So,
I was going to say, yeah. If you want to keep going, I'm happy.
Oh, no, I don't.
A little tidbit for something I'm excited about Miami. Miami is one of the best tournaments for giving wild cards to future talents, and that's probably more the case in the women's draw than the men's draw. The men's draw, I think there's they've given a wild card to a 17-year-old Italian called Federico Cina. So keep an eye out for that. Obviously, Chris Eubanks has got a wild card, Elliot Spiritzi's got a wild card for Americans. But on the women's side, aside from Petra Kvitova, who's got wild cards, I want to just quickly point out that we've got a 17-year-old Tyra Grant from the USA, who's got a wild card. And she's a very exciting prospect because there's going to be a big stage debut. Same for Victoria Mboko from Canada and Siaka Ishii, who's a 19-year-old from Japan. So if you're going to Miami, depending on where these women land up in the draw, they could be ground passes. Go check them out because you might be seeing them on big stages in the next sort of 5 years.
Yeah. A lot of those names I haven't watched in person, but I'm very fascinated. I've heard a lot about Victoria. I think it's her first name. Yeah, and she's been winning all these ITF events in a row, so I'm very excited to see what she does in Miami. It's always different when these young talents play, in sort of like the big leagues, I guess you would say, but sometimes a lot of them just turn up ready, so I'll be interested to see how that group does. It is time. You know what time it is.
It's about Fortnite time.
Fortnite time, yay!
Hey, it's been a while.
Nick sent me his player of the Fortnite like a week ago.
I did, because there was no one else who could possibly beat that.
That is true.
Say who it is? Sanai Kartal, who it's difficult to go into the reasons why I've given her player of the Fortnite. Like, there's the obvious ones. She's a lucky loser. She's now climbing her way to a career high ranking. She broke top 100 at kind of beginning of the year. Now is climbing well up as a result of making the last 16 of Indian Wells in style and losing to Aryna Sabalenka. But I also think that there's this wonderful parallel with us at Groundpass with Sanai Kartal because of the episode I can't talk about yet. So you will realise why it's so significant that it's fun that this particular lucky loser made it to the last 16 of Indian Wells. She was probably going to be in the morning anyway, but she's particularly special to us because of her relationship with our guest in our next Meet the Players episode, Professionals episode. And that is all I will say. All will be revealed when you listen to that episode.
Yeah, you're going to have to come back and listen to that episode now just to find out the story.
It's out. Sorry, guys, but...
You just have to come back. My player of the Fortnite is Colton Smith. He's a young American player who I first heard about because he won the Cleveland Challenger at the beginning of this year. That was a challenger that happened right after the Australian Open in the States, and he won it. And it was such a stacked challenger, and he was not the person anyone was expecting to win it. So I definitely marked that as someone to watch. And guess what? I show up in Indian Wells and he's in qualifying. He gets through qualifying. His last match was so emotional. His mom was there. Everyone was there. And it was so exciting to see him qualify. And then he wins his first round match against Flavio Caboli, a top 40 player. It's the biggest win he'd ever had. And it was just so sweet. And it was on his birthday. Oh, I forgot. It was his birthday on the day that he won. So it's just such a great moment seeing a young player come up and, and it seems like he's going to have a great future. He plays college tennis at the University of Arizona, and they have this phrase, which I'm always sort of like, that's so funny, but he's the winningest. And I don't know if that's a real word, but he's won the most of that college program for Arizona State ever. And so he's new, he's upcoming. He talked, we got to speak to him in press as well. And he's really a nature lover kind of person. When he was talking, I was like, oh, he could totally hang out with Tommy Paul. Like they could go fishing together and it would totally work. They could go fishing together. Another fun fact about him, he hadn't had coffee ever in his whole life until, well, then it was 3 weeks ago, but now it's 4 weeks. Like ever. He started drinking coffee 4 weeks ago.
Is it because you introduced it to him?
This is a possibility, but no. And it was really funny because his coach was in the interview with him, it's because these players are so young to the game and stuff. It's like they haven't done press conferences before. You know what I mean? So his coach was in the press conferences with him and he was laughing about it. He was like, yeah, he'd never had coffee before, but he needed a pick me up now that he's playing these qualifiers. He's traveling for Magic, so he tried coffee and he likes it. So he's going with that. He also got a wild card into the Arizona Challenger that we spoke about. He got 2 really good wins. I think the biggest one there was against Roman Safulin, although I don't know who's higher ranked. He also beat Shevchenko in that tournament as well. So he's on the rise. He's up and coming. I don't know if we will see him in Miami. We'll see. But again, someone to watch. Colton Smith. Write it down. Don't say we didn't tell you.
Latest college tennis graduate on the scene, and you heard it first. I was like following his progress to qualifying. I thought, I bet Anastasia's keeping an eye on him. So yeah, great. I think that's a great pick, and I think we're clearly going to be seeing him, at least in the US, continuing to make some waves. By the way, I was reacting pretty hard to what you were saying there, because I obviously, if you haven't checked it out, go check out who, like, these videos that Indian Wells been putting out on their social media, and one of them was like, which player would you most want to be stuck in the desert with? And I don't know if you've seen this. Have you seen this video?
No.
Because pretty much the first 3 responses set the tone for the video, because they all said Tommy Paul. Your fellow players, like asking tennis players, which of their fellow players would you most want to be stuck out in the desert with? And they all said Tommy Paul, because he actually knew what he was doing. Because he'd actually know what he was doing.
Oh my goodness. Oh no, I have to go find that now. That's so funny. They're like, he can survive.
Yes, he will keep me alive. I think, I can't remember what, like, Francis Tiafoe's pick was like, it was Tiafoe. Someone picked a player and said, to be honest, we're both going to die, so it'd just be hilarious to be with this person. And Zverev's response to it was Novak Djokovic, because he's the most famous person, so everyone will be looking for him. Just this highly, overly logical answer. I was like, that completely makes sense.
It totally makes sense. Of course, they would find them in like 5 minutes. We need to get them. I can't believe Tommy Paul was the one everyone picked. There you go. Okay, awesome. Wow, this was a great episode. Again, we're now super professional. You're going to have to, you can't really match the professionalism of this podcast anymore.
I know, complete with Anastasia's quotes Zoom background.
Look, not even AI could do this. You know what I mean?
No. The less questions we ask, the better. And on that note, thank you everyone on Groundpass. Actually, do you know what? Before we close, I should say, please do ask us questions. That's why we're here. Ask us questions about the tennis, not how the podcast gets made. On that note, thanks everyone for listening. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Bye, guys.
Bye.